Pivoting from veterans to new recruits, the U.S. military is intensifying its efforts to meet young people where they spend their time, online and on their devices. But as John Yang reports in this report, there are critics who say these new recruiting methods also raise new concerns.
Among the make-believe superheroes and stormtroopers at this San Antonio Car Show and Comic Convention, the Air Force hopes to find its next generation of real-life warriors. So in a hall filled with iconic cars from TV shows and movies, the Air Force's star attraction.
Yeah, you got it.
A 70-foot trailer filled with touchscreen games and F-35 fighter jet simulators. Air Force recruiter Staff Sergeant Jeffrey Cabrera. How valuable is this in terms of generating leads for you as a recruiter?
Oh, it's extremely valuable. The reason being is I'm not just out here by myself. I have done multiple events where I'm just by myself at a tent table, and I don't get as much foot traffic. But with assets like this, it does generate that foot traffic 100%.
The price of admission? Giving Air Force recruiters contact and demographic information.
Whenever you're ready, just go and start the game.
Cabrera says the games are intended to reflect real-life skills like defusing an explosive device. So I've probably blown up.
I would say so.
It's an in-person element of the Pentagon's push to reach Generation Z, those born after 1996. Almost 90% of them play games on phones and other devices. So what better way to get their attention?
You know, a basic rule in recruiting is you got to go where your market is.
Major General Edward Thomas Jr. is commander of the Air Force Recruiting Service.
If we're looking at the average recruiting population, ages 17 to 24, we've got to be where they are in those virtual spaces.
Welcome to Echo.
Last year, the Air Force released 2 new free games. One is called Command the Stack. Aimed at those 13 and older, it's an augmented reality mission simulator that uses real satellite scans. The games can be played on the Air Force website or downloaded from app stores. They're promoted through targeted online advertising.
So about 80% of all our advertising and all of our outreach is done online. It's done in those virtual spaces. At a very broad level, it's done from everything from Twitter to Snapchat to Facebook.
All to show Gen Z that they have a place in a service that this year marks its 75th anniversary, amid what Pentagon officials say is the toughest recruiting environment across the military in decades.
It's been an unusually difficult recruiting market as our recruiters have gone out and re-engaged at the end of COVID, fought through the labor challenges that we have going on.
Among the big reasons, about 3/4 of young Americans don't meet the military's qualifications because they're overweight, have a criminal record, didn't graduate from high school, or don't meet some other requirement. And a shrinking military has meant fewer young people have family connections to the armed forces. In 1995, 40% had a parent who had served. By 2017, it was 15%. Recruiters also say Gen Z is more skeptical than their elders. That attitude was evident in this April TikTok video showing Ball State University students mocking a mass email from Army recruiters and criticizing U.S. foreign policy. The Pentagon's use of gaming in recruiting has drawn some high-profile critics.
This amendment is specifically to block recruitment practices and funding.
In 2020, New York Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, herself a gamer, tried unsuccessfully to kill the Army and Navy's esports live streaming. Teams of soldiers and sailors competing on Twitch, a gaming platform which has millions of visitors a day.
Right now, currently, children on platforms such as Twitch are bombarded with banner ads that link to recruitment sign-up forms that can be submitted by children as young as 12 years old. These are not educational outreach programs, but recruitment forms for the military.
Not all service branches think esports is a good idea. In 2020, the Marine Corps said it would not field a team. Issues associated with combat are too serious to be gamified in a responsible manner.
It's Afghans for a better tomorrow, right?
Chris Velasquez, who deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan as a Marine, agrees. He's a leader of Gamers for Peace, an anti-war veterans group whose members live stream to counter what they call the military entertainment complex.
The recruiters have access to kids, and kids are consuming recruiter content.
in any and all environment. It can be on their cell phone or in front of their computer in their home, where their guard is down and nobody else is around monitoring what an adult is telling them. We are trying to soften the impact and influence those recruiters have on children.
I believe that video games do trivialize war. They do trivialize death.
Air Force veteran Lisa Ling was a drone program technician.
If you're trying to recruit people or you're trying to attract people into the military using a video game, you're attracting them to something that is not real. And in that way, what happens to these young people, should they experience the realities of war, will be devastating.
The top recruiter in the Air Force, which does not have an esports team despite its video games, acknowledges the criticisms. There are some people who say that some of these games are too realistic, that they desensitize young people to violence and to these sorts of acts.
I think maybe in some senses that could be true. And as a parent, a grandparent of four, I would really encourage a lot of involvement in what's right for each individual, because it is important that people understand that real life and real warfare is not a game.
And he says encouraging those younger than the military's minimum enlistment age of 17 to play the Air Force's video games is not the same thing as actively recruiting them.
We're not recruiting anybody under the age of 17. Now, there are a lot of young Americans that we want to inspire through a variety of different ways. So they're thinking about the military as a career.
Help me understand that, the difference between inspiring and recruiting.
Yeah, really what it is, it's about the active conversation. When they're 17 or older, we'll get that conversation in earnest started about how you actually come and what steps you take to join the United States Air Force or the United States Space Force or any other service. Under 17, we're just not having those conversations. It's not the time to do it. It's not appropriate.
Oh! At the convention, the Air Force's gaming display struck a chord with Nick Booker Brown, a sophomore who plays football at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Had you been thinking about the Air Force at all before?
I never thought about it till I just got in there. That kind of changed my mind. That's probably going to be my plan B, the Air Force. It kind of made my day too.
What's your plan A?
NFL.
A maybe that the Air Force hopes can turn into a yes. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm John Yang in San Antonio.
So fascinating to learn about that. Thank you, John Yang.